Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of PassionateSoccerCoach.com. I am your host, Alden Bislagic, and in today's discussion, we have a really special guest. She's a certified health coach, Jeannie Leitao. But I don't want to introduce you. I want you to introduce yourself, Jeannie, to the audience, because we're going to be talking about a really important topic for these young athletes, which is nutrition and their well-being by, having the right foods, like hydration, sleep, and all that stuff, which is really important that feeds into their growth. So welcome to the show, Jeannie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
So why don't you give us a little bit background about yourself, Jeannie?
Okay. So, I've been doing this for a very long time. I was originally a certified and degreed personal trainer. And I did that for many years and very successful with that. And that was in its growth period where people really weren't really comfortable or didn't know much about personal training. Now it's like the word Kleenex, everybody has one, right? So it was really interesting being a pioneer, but I knew I needed to do more. So I ended up going back to school and getting several degrees. And one of the degrees I have is in sports and conditioning for athletes. I hold another degree in sports and exercise physiology. I have another one in exercise science. I have another one in nutrition and dietetics. So I've been around for a while, right? Showing my age, but anyway, but I am also a coach. I am a health coach certified. And I'm also a diabetes educator. So I see all types of situations, different people, different sizes, different shapes, different ages, different needs. I work with people that want to gain weight, lose weight, athletes. So, I'm pretty well-rounded with my background when it comes to health and fitness. And I think nutrition always trumps everything. I mean, it's very important that you work out. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of that, but it's really important that you eat well, because that has everything to do with helping you build a strong, healthy body, helping you build muscle, if that's your goal. So that's just a little bit about me.
Excellent. Oh, that's a nice resume. Qualifications. But we're talking about young athletes here. So in your professional opinion, why is proper nutrition so important at the development, especially in the early ages, 10 to 16, maybe 10 to 18? Why is it important?
I think it's kind of similar to building a home, right? If you don't build a foundation, how strong is the home? So I think, being a young athlete, I think that it's important that you realize that it's going to help you build a base. It's going to help you strengthen your, not just your muscles, but your ligaments, your tendons. It's going to increase your performance. It's going to, if you're looking to be stronger, it's going to help you with more strength, more power. I mean, it just plays a major role. And when people come in here, they always say, I'll say to them, oh, maybe you put on some muscle. And they'll say, oh, no, I didn't work out. I don't think so. And I'd say, well, that's not really how you put on muscle. I think everybody thinks that's the only piece. But the truth of the matter is you have to make sure you're getting enough sleep. You have to make sure that you're eating the right foods and the right taking your macronutrients and making sure that you're eating them all, such as protein, grains, fats, veggies. And so that's really important in order to build this base and be strong so that you perform better. Critical that you start thinking about it when you're younger.
So how would you like to have a proper balanced diet for these young athletes? What would you advise them to do? I know you mentioned a couple of the major categories.
Yes, I'll show you. I took this out because I thought this was a great example. I don't know if you can see this,
Yep.
but if they were to look at a plate, you want to balance it out so that you have enough veggies, you have enough protein, and you have enough carbohydrate with a little bit of fat. And so I think, those are your macronutrients, right? So you have proteins, which would be your meats, fish, your dairy. If you want carbohydrate, it would be things like rice, potato, quinoa, breads, oatmeal, that type of thing. If you're looking for veggies, obviously, so green veggies, or whatever you need, right? For veggies. And then the other thing would be your fats, so making sure that you're eating healthy fats, whether it be nuts, whether it be avocado, whether it be, different oils, so olive oil, that type of thing, certain butters. And so you just want to make sure that you have all the food groups.
Excellent point. Which brings me to my next question to you. Athletes have always these events, trainings, games. What's a good pre-training, pre-game meal or snack that you can advise? And then also post-game or post-practice, so you can refuel your energy.
Your body.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's super important too. People are always asking me, well, first of all, they'll ask me, what percentages should I eat? So in other words, when you talk about macronutrients, should I eat how much protein, how much fat? And everybody's different, right? Because everybody's a different size. So do you do, depending on your size, what percentage is really the easiest way to go? So I'll usually tell them 45 to maybe 65% of your carbohydrates, so that you have enough energy, so that you have enough glucose, you have enough glycogen. For protein, usually I tell them like anywhere between 15 and 25%. And then for fats, it's usually 20 to 30, 35%. And so, but for pregame, I think you want to do a couple hours before, maybe do a little bit of carbohydrate. And then I think, your actual meal, right? So if you do a little bit of carbohydrate beforehand, and then your actual meal should be like a higher carb, lower fat, because what you don't want is you don't want a lot of fat or spicy things before you play. So I would recommend like a moderate protein and a high carb with a lower fat, so that you can perform better. Does that make sense?
Help. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to help athletes recover faster, right? And help the bodies heal up. Is that correct?
Yes. It'll absolutely. And it'll also help them, won't get in the way of them really performing at their peak. So if you've got too much fat, you start to feel a little weighed down. So you really want to keep your fat low before you play. I know it's a little controversial. Some places will say, oh no, eat more fat, but that's not really what I would recommend. I think you'll perform much better.
No, you make a great point. What about hydration? Like an importance of?
Oh God, hydration is really critical. I mean, especially when you're younger and you have such a low body fat percent. So if your percentage is low, it's super important. So you have to make sure you're doing enough water. So people will say, well, how much water should I do? If you're a female, I would say anywhere between probably 10 to maybe even 9 to 11 cups of water a day. If you're a male, probably anywhere between 12 and 15 cups a day. but it's critical because you want to avoid any type of, what do I want to call it? Like a heat stroke, or any type of if, and I've seen this where, kids will go out on the turf and they're playing super hard and it's so hot and they're not hydrated enough. So it's really critical that you hydrate yourself before, during, and after, especially before and after. Yeah.
What's your take on like energy drinks or like Powerade, Gatorade?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think it's okay. I think, I think you need electrolytes. So, they've got different drinks out there that you can do. They do have the the Powerade or the Gatorade. They also have drinks like Smart. Have you ever seen Smart Water?
Yep.
They also have Smart Water, which supposedly has electrolytes that are put back into the water. I think that's really important too, because you're perspiring. And so you need to replenish your electrolytes, right? Because you're trying to avoid any kind of a heat issue. So I think that's critical. I think you need to think about how you can refuel or rehydrate yourself. So I would say you could probably do a few of them. I wouldn't go crazy with them, but I think you could do a few. I think it would be helpful.
Should kids stay away from juices, in your opinion?
I'm not a big believer in juice. I think juice spikes the sugar, your sugar, brings your sugar up high. I think if you needed a little bit of that, would I highly recommend it? I mean, I suppose we only use it if people are actually going into low blood sugar. But, if you're eating super healthy and you're drinking your fluids and staying hydrated, depending on the sport you're doing, and of course you're doing soccer, if it's very hot out, it probably could help. The problem with doing juice is if you do it, your blood sugar is going to drop. And so, is that best for performance? Not always. So I think you have to be careful with it. They do have a juice that you can buy that is actually a low sugar juice so they do have that over, I think, at Whole Foods. They have a juice. I'll tell you what the name of it is. Hang on. It is called Uncle Matt's. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And that is only 1 gram of sugar. So that is something they could do to stay hydrated. That's a thought. But you got to be careful with I know a lot of people say, oh, but it's quick, fast, easy. Well, there are other ways to get that too. So for peak performance, I would just be careful with that. The power drinks or whatever it is that you I don't know what you recommend, but Gatorade will help them for sure. There's, I think, a couple of different waters that you can do that will also replenish your electrolytes.
I know you mentioned something, proper nutrition, would help them with the peak performance. And, with kids, they don't like veggies. They don't like this. Are there any supplements they can take to help them with this, to get the same levels they needed, let's say on the greens? Let's say they really hate it. Like, is there something they can take?
Greens are tough, right? So people, and listen, I know, because when I was younger, I did not like greens. Yeah. I can remember my mother giving me peas and I would put them under the chair, and I'd feed them to my dog. I mean, I understand that it's right. It's texture, it's tactile. I understand that. I think it's how they're made. I think that's a big factor, and whether you're exposed to them. My mom used to make terrible veggies, like nothing on them, just steam them. And they were just so gross. I just couldn't even get myself to eat them. Had she done it differently, I might have eaten them. Maybe doctor them up a little, put a little butter on them, make them taste, spice them up. maybe that might be helpful, because it's very difficult for you to get the veggies if you don't eat them. So what does that lead me to? There really aren't many that I'm aware of. There aren't pills. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but I have not seen them. You might be able to do a powder. You could take a green powder, that has all the greens in it, and somehow camouflage it in like a protein drink. That's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
You have to figure out a way, because they are critical. I mean, you have all these great properties in the greens. You know how they always talk about, oh, eat your greens, and we were always like, yeah, okay. But it's true, you do need them. So how do you get them? The only other thing I can think of that might be helpful for the little ones are plant sterols, where you get the sterol from the plant, but it's in a pill form. I mean, that would be an idea.
What's your take on those fruit and veggie drinks they have? Like, it's like smoothies. I think it's smoothies.
You could do a smoothie. Yeah, I could see that working.
Like,
Yeah.
they all, like, you just say it's 100% fruits or 100% veggies.
As long as it doesn't have a ton of sugar in it.
And how can parents or coaches or players figure out that it's got no sugar inside, like, or like no additional like corn syrup or anything? Like, I think you mentioned something like being clean. Is the right terminology?
Yes.
Clean.
So what I mean by that is trying to find a product that keeps the sugar lower, right? So maybe keep it under like 10 grams of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, I would stay away from like corn syrup, any of those artificial things. I would try to stay away from them, like erythritol, or what was the other one? There's a couple of them. I would be very careful with them. The syrups, the corn syrups, and again, I know it's helpful when you're going to go out on the field. People think, oh, give them sugar. Kind of like when you do a marathon. They'll tell you, oh, take these little things. They're just straight sugar, and you can, suck on it while you're running. Well, that's long term. You're doing it for 4 hours. Your athletes are only doing it for what, an hour?
75 minutes tops.
75, yeah. So I straight sugar to me is not always the best choice. I'd rather you eat foods to keep your balance, so that when you are running or when you're playing soccer or whatever, you have a peak performance and you're not spiking up and then dropping. So to answer your question, yeah, I think I'd be careful. Just make sure that they're low sugar.
It says on the packages that
it usually is on the back of it if you look at it. Yeah. And so the problem is, whenever you liquefy carbohydrate, it usually will bring the sugar up as well. So you just have to be careful. Just read the backs. And that's what I would recommend for parents. The most important thing, I think, for parents is have food. Go to the grocery store, make sure you have food so that it's accessible for them. Make sure it's cooked. If they're 10 years old, I don't anticipate that a 10-year-old's going to be at the stove making a meal. So you want to make sure that their families are, offering what they need to make it easier for them as younger athletes.
And how can coaches help in this journey? Because coaches are teachers as well, right?
Of course.
So how can we help educate kids? Do you have any tips for us, like some simple rules to follow, to give them advice? Do you have anything?
I think education is critical. And so I think, if you're working with a dietitian like myself or whomever, they should be able to give you some information so that you're able to share it with them. But I think the best communication that you could have with them is to just talk to them about the importance of it. maybe have somebody come and speak to them. Sometimes that will help them because they see it from a different view. But I think education is always key. And, I think about when we were growing up and how, my mom would say, make sure you drink your water. And you'd think, is it really that important? I mean, oh yeah, that's important. You have to stay hydrated. Well, what does that even mean? As a young person, I don't know that they really absorb that the way that they should. So I think it's kind of a show and tell type thing. Maybe bring things to show them, maybe even bring them something for them to try. You talk about vegetables and how they don't like them. Maybe that's a thought, make a pan of veggies and have them all try it and see if they'll survive it. I mean, there's lots of different avenues you can take, but I think the communication is key. So whether you're bringing somebody in or whether you're doing it yourself or you're handing materials out, they all work. And it's not something that happens overnight. I think it's something that happens with time, right?
100%. You mentioned something before, having the right foods available to the young athletes, and also comes back to planning, right? Planning the day, and
Prep.
what you intake and what you're burning. Can you touch up on that area a little bit?
So I think, 80 to 90% of the battle with doing things correctly is making sure you're prepared, right? So I always relate it to school. And I tell people, if you go to school, like when I went to college, so I was in college for 27 years. When I went to school, I knew in order for me to get a great grade, I had to study. So what did that entail? It entailed me having books, setting up a schedule, figuring out when I was going to study and how long I was going to study, because in my heart, I wanted to get an A. So I'm sure you have these young athletes that want to be the best they can be, right?
Yep.
So prep is key. And because they're so young, they really need their parents to be on board. And so parents are going to have to make sure that they're shopping, that they're cooking, that they have these foods accessible so that when their child comes home or is going to a practice, they know what to do pre-game, they know what to do post. We have a rule that we use with post, we call it the 3 R's. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
3 R's. It's called refuel, rebuild, and rehydrate. So you have to have preparation to do these things. They just don't fall out of the sky or happen through osmosis. So it's really key that the family is on board. And so that's what I would recommend, just preparation, having it available. That's most of what you need. The rest is easy. It's just a matter of eating it.
And it's also what you're buying, right? As a parent.
Oh, yes.
If you're buying stuff that's not healthy, kids gonna be tempted, they're gonna eat it, and it's just gonna damage their bodies as well. That's a challenge I foresee as like we're talking about, like healthy, balanced diet and all that stuff. But if you as a parent buying the wrong foods or snacks or sweets or whatever it is, you are affecting your child's healthy journey. Yeah.
Not much. Just their performance, but their health.
And it some people don't realize it, like the foods that we are eating, how it affects you, like just personally, like, and as you keep going and keep getting older, I only imagine like 20 years from now on, if you keep doing what you're doing, what can happen, right?
Absolutely. They just did it's like a 60-minute from the CDC, and they had done some autopsies on children, and they were showing what happened with their food and how it affected their arteries. We never think about that as adults. We think, oh, they're young, they can handle it, they're invincible, but not really. It's not a very healthy thing for your health, number one, but especially for performance. If you want to be good at what you're doing, you've got to make sure that you're eating healthy and correctly. And so what does that mean? It means that your parents are going to have to be on board and learn about what should I do? What should I buy? What should I make? How should I make it? I mean, there's different levels, right?
100%. I think you mentioned something. We're going to post something for parents to download at the end of this as well. So they can at least get a feeling what they can eat.
Sure.
But that's something that you're going to provide me with. Any advice you have for like coaches, parents, as we, keep tackling this journey of being healthy, eating the right food, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep as well. That's part of the journey. What's the best advice you can tell us?
I think that it's not simple. And I think you have the different categories, right? Like what you just mentioned: sleep, hydration, food. Those are the three areas that we really focus on. You've got to make sure that that they're doing what they need to do. It just goes back to having a plan, right? Have a game plan, and then you follow it. So what could you possibly tell these young athletes yourself? Basically what we're saying right now, you just have to educate them. You have to teach them, and they really communicate very well with show and tell. So if you have things to show them, or ways they can experiment, taste things, that really is the best way for them to learn. So if you've got family and they're trying to do it, the same goes for the family. Make it fun. Make a couple different foods and then have them sit down and do like it's a game almost, and have them try them, see how they like them, whether it's, macaroni or whatever it is you want to do, a vegetable. Make it fun, because, getting healthy should be fun. It should not be painful, and it should not be not fun. It should be something you look forward to because you feel better. It helps with whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I think it just always goes back to education, but I would try to make it fun, and I would do like demonstrations or different things you can do. And parents can do that at home. That's easy. As a coach, all you can do is do what you're doing. Educate, talk to them, communicate, see how you can help them. Maybe bring in something here and there to have them try it, because they probably would try it before that with you than they would with maybe their parents, Yep. But that's always fun.
100%. I always say, even with my own kids, even though I'm a subject matter expert in an area,
yeah,
you listen to somebody like a teacher who has probably 10% of that's standard. It doesn't matter in any area.
Absolutely.
Always listen to the teachers and coaches. Any other tips you want to leave us with for this generation or going forward? Anything from your end?
I always talk to people about, what would an Olympic person do, right? Somebody that's going to the Olympics. They work at it every day. They've got a plan. They realize that they have to work hard in order to get to where they need to be, right? I always talk about the Gabby Douglas story. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's an amazing show that you should all watch. It's an amazing show about this little girl who grew up very poor, and her family, they lived in a van. I mean, it was just the most, and it's a true story. You remember Gabby? She was an Olympic gymnast. Phenomenal story. I think every little athlete should watch it, because it really makes you step back and realize what it takes to be really good at something, even though I know they're young right now and they're probably not looking at it from that standpoint, but it's just a great movie, and it's a true story. And so, I think my take on anything is, if you want something you've got to work for it, and you've got to have a good plan. You can't go into it blindly unless that's what you're doing. If you're doing it just for fun, then I guess it's not really going to matter. But if you're looking to be really good at it or improve your performance or your endurance, there's education that's involved in application. So you have to think about, what do I want and what do I need to do to get there? And then you play it out. And before you know it, you're going to be sitting there telling somebody else how to do it, right? So I think health is number one. Without your health, there's nothing. Exercise is definitely up there with it. I think the two together can make you do amazing things. And I think one of the points that I want to make that no one ever really thinks about is when you start this at a younger age, when you get older, you have great habits. Your body is so much healthier, and hopefully you will have a great life when you're older, and you're not the type of person that's sitting there thinking, okay, I really need to drop 30 pounds, or you're already practicing everything that you should be doing. And so I think your life is going to be much healthier and much happier as you get older. And of course, like I said, you don't think about that when you're young. So, we think about it because obviously we're no longer 10 years old, but it does make a difference, makes a huge difference. So I recommend that you stay healthy and you do the right things for sure.
Great tips. Jeannie, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
I think the audience is going to love it. It's great advice. This is really, really important topic for any athlete. Proper nutrition, hydration, and sleep. It's a must. It's a must. So thanks again for being part of the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.